Welcome back to this week's episode, and please enjoy part 2 of my interview with Sam Macarah, childhood cancer survivor, advocate, and ambassador for the St. Baldrick's Foundation. And please, following this episode, check out stbaldricks.org. Because really, at this point, yes, you're here. You're being able to do this now. You're being able to kind of advocate. So I like 100%. Your answer was perfect, and I just I didn't want it to come off in a bad way, but I just wanted to kind of get an idea of your understanding versus what I've heard from in our own personal experience.
Oh, right, and that's another thing that DC did so well for me is I heard like horror stories about like having to deal with the bureaucracy of this hospital doesn't have this, or this doctor can't do this, or this whatever it was, or this doctor was I'm sorry if I'm not
whatever you want.
Okay. Well, this one doctor was a dick or whatever it was. It's like I've heard, especially in DC, going around hearing from. It was a total of probably about 20 to 30 bereaved mothers, and then me and my dad in a group. And the first night after our whole day of training, we went through everybody's stories so we could all be kind of united to go into the Congress. But standing there, I was like, oh my God, like I need to call my mom. Like I was in tears. I mean, these people had the worst stories. In like their kid passed away, and there were doctors that were checked out, or just like you said, they clocked out for the day and they were done, or whatever it was. So while I was very lucky, that's why I said like going to DC was such an eye-opener for me, because I got to hear, because all I'd been doing till that point was telling my positive survivor story, and it was the first real time I really felt survivor's guilt, like what you were talking about earlier. I don't actually feel survivor's guilt throughout my life. I'm very, very grateful and very excited to help out. But that was the first time I was really like, holy shit, why me? Like, why didn't these kids survive? These kids were amazing people. They were all doing so much. They were, getting ready to do whatever, and their parents were so excited for them that it just feels terrible to be the only one in that situation who made it out, So yeah, I when you asked the question, I felt there was no, I was like, I didn't feel any disrespect to doctors or whatever. It wasn't anything like that. It was like I really felt that question because, well, my experience was positive, and all the doctors were great, and it was an amazing experience. You know what I mean? I've heard so many shitty stories, like horrible experiences, and there's not much we can do about that other than raise more money and try and get more doctors or get more research or make the treatments easier. So many things that can be done just from raising money and advocacy for kids' cancer that there's no reason not to. You know what I mean? There's no reason we shouldn't be sitting here having a conversation or raising money for something that is so vital in our society. I mean, St. Baldrick's before these interviews sends me a lot of stats about what I could talk about if I don't have any talking points or whatever, and it's like 1 in 5 kids die from cancer. More children are lost to cancer in the U.S. than any other disease. Like they gave me all these facts that I had to say because they blow my mind every time I read them, that the numbers are still this high. It's 2024. Medical research is apparently amazing, but the numbers are still this high. what are we doing wrong? You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Yeah, the numbers are, when it comes to that, the numbers are actually worse than they were 4 years ago. When our daughter was diagnosed, that big number of 43 kids a day is now 47. And we get boasted all the time about an 80% cure rate, but that's 80%. That means 80% will live 5 years. That's what that means. And
right.
that 1 in 5 kids to our government is acceptable loss, and that's a shame. For us to be, and the reality situation is advocates and organizations are the ones that are carrying the load both financially and mentally to make a change here, not the people that are physically writing the bills and that are having crying sessions on the House floor every week about something that's insignificant to this country, and they're worried about everything else but us. It's like just like in life, you got to take care of your problems at home before you fix everybody else's outside your house. And we're every single day, 400,000 kids a year, right, across the world. And then we have 1 in 5, and you've got, and all, I have statistics that are hanging on the back wall here, and it's the same thing. And you look at these numbers, and we could rattle them off all day, and you could get people to listen. But like I said, I think they just tune out and they say, 47 kids when there's 80 million, that's not that big of a deal, right? But no, that's 47 every single day, right? And you have 1,800 kids that are not going to survive every single year. That's 1,800 families that have to bury their children. That's a problem. It's completely backwards from the way life in society is supposed to be. They're supposed to grow old, take care of us. They're supposed to be the next doctors and scientists, politicians, pilots, whatever. That's what their destinies are, and they're losing 70 years of their life that's what we give up when we lose a child to pediatric cancer. So it's a shame that we have these numbers in our head. It's a shame that these numbers are a real thing, and that it's still so hard to get people to listen to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It should not be that big of an issue. It should be like, this is terrible. These are kids. We should be doing something about it. But it's really easy to turn your back, close your eyes, and walk away and pretend that the problem doesn't happen.
And I mean, it's especially easy nowadays just to because people are so desensitized now. This is speaking from experience too, like going through Instagram and seeing the craziest stuff that you can just go right past it and it's no problem. Like, people are so desensitized to any issues that pop up on your phone or your laptop or whatever, because they could just click away from it. They're like, not right now. I don't want to deal with this right now. And it's like so easy to do that on a large scale that our job of trying to raise money and raise awareness and do all this, while it's easier to spread the word on social media, I found that it's a lot harder to keep people's attention and keep them wanting to do more. I even having a conversation with some of my friends about what they can do, sometimes it's hard to I have to be like, hey, focus, I'm trying to tell you something, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's definitely, our job has gotten a lot harder. And that's where I think people my age who are smarter than me will come in big time, because we'll need some ideas from people who grew up with this, who knew, who some ideas and this is why it's so important for me, especially, I think, to be doing what I'm doing, is to help people realize that it's not only kids who are 4 years old who are getting cancer and who need help, and it's kind of up to us, like my age, to start picking up the slack. I see whenever I go work on something with St. Baldrick's or Make-A-Wish, of course I see their whole team there, the Make-A-Wish, the St. Baldrick's, but I don't see many people my age or younger who are getting ready to help, or who are getting excited about doing philanthropy, which I can understand in some sense, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, is just trying to make people realize you don't need to be 40 with a bunch of money to help these charities. You just need to be willing to help. So yeah.
Yeah, that's 100%. You don't have to, like, honestly, one of the biggest things to help these charities and what it is really awareness and really spreading their message and their name. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
obviously, 501c3s and nonprofit organizations, we run on funds, we run on money and donations from people, but really it's that word of mouth. It's getting it out there. It's noticing what the logo is and having that namesake behind it, right? We with absolutely no disrespect in this world, everybody knows what pink stands for, right? Everybody knows what that ribbon is. Everybody knows the big organization that we all hear about as soon as October starts. We know what it is.
Right.
We know the organization that's on TV and does commercials. It's a namesake thing, and you understand
Right.
it. And we want really the same type of recognition for our community so that you can really become that next big thing and hear what we're saying. Being able to get the word out there has always been the hardest thing because it is very easy. Like you said, it is very easy to scroll past. It is very easy to not look at things that are hard to look at.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, if anybody wants to see images of something that is terrible to look at, give me a call. I'll send you an image of something that's terrible to look at. And it's a child fighting for their life in this. And then there's parents like me, there's survivors that have these images out there that will scare the hell out of you, that will put you to your knees, the strongest person on the planet, and it'll break your heart. But
Yeah.
it's the reality that you really need to see so that you can understand that this is a real, true issue. But yeah, it is definitely easy. Like it's again to scroll past. It's easy to clock out at the end of the day and walk away. We notice a lot of it's hard for us to get support sometimes because I think companies believe if I support you, that means I have to look at it. That means I have to be associated with it. And
Right.
again, by turning around and walking away, it doesn't exist. This rare disease, classified by a Rare Diseases Act that I wish we could get rid of,
Right.
is only rare because we're told that it is, but you believe it to the point where you can just ignore it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know it was still like it was on a rare diseases list. Like that to me is ridiculous. I mean, it's not rare at all. Like my my type of cancer might be a little more rare, but cancer is not rare. You know, I since I've gotten cancer and had finished it and all that, and have been open about like wanting to help and all that, I've gotten calls from friends who have family who are dealing with cancer and like in overwhelming amounts that you wouldn't imagine. Like there are more people dealing with cancer on a regular basis than you can even think of. You know what I mean? It's not something that's like, you'll know one person in your life who's had cancer. It's like if you meet 100 people, I can't do the math in my head, but like half of them are going to have had cancer. Or you know what I'm saying? Like it's
Mhm.
not something that is is rare anymore. This is something that we need to like look at and realize this is not good. Like this is not something that we want to have around. And like what I was saying earlier about the cancer floor was filled and they were out of rooms. Like they needed to make more rooms or make another floor. You know, it was always packed. It was never a slow moving environment. And by the way, the fourth floor is their cancer floor at CHLA. So whenever I say the floor, that's just because. So the fourth floor was always moving, always like super active. You couldn't just walk around there. Like it felt like if you've ever seen Grey's Anatomy when they're all like freaking out and moving around. That's what the fourth floor always looked like. It was never slow. Yeah, at night too. Like it was always going because these kids were in such like dire situations and their cancers were so invasive that they needed constant treatment and paying attention to. And so that just blew me away that it's still classified as a rare disease. I didn't know that, which is absolutely crazy. I don't,
Yeah,
that's
that's the excuse. Having it on that rare diseases list and have it in that act is just that's an excuse to not worry about it. That's an excuse to not make a difference and to make changes. And you know, we've uh, we've heard for years, like everybody knows, the 4%. the 4% of funding goes to pediatric cancer every year. We were in DC last year, and they were super, super excited that they had doubled it to 8. I still think that sucks. 8. I don't understand. 8% is still. I mean, it's not even $1 billion. It's less than $1 billion. So, you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure that Jeff Bezos makes that in about 30 seconds, and we're spreading that amongst the entire population of children over the course of a year. And so I don't understand really where how that is decided and why that is decided that we're going to do, because a lot of the research that you get for adult cancers, which I will say 100 times over, adult cancers and childhood cancers are different. They are not the same. They react different. You react different. The treatments, a lot of them are the same, unfortunately, which is part of the problem. But a lot of the research you get for adult cancers comes from findings through childhood cancer. So right. We are treating adults through children, but we're not reciprocating that act back to the kids and giving them a fighting chance here. There's no protocols. There's no understanding. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of doctors, I think, out there. Not all of them, but a lot of them are very territorial, especially in this space, of which I've noticed.
Right.
So reaching out and saying, hey, we've got a kid with XYZ. How do you treat it? Oh, well, send them to me and I'll treat them. Okay, well, if it goes well, they want the credit. If it doesn't, they want to blame everybody else. And we've noticed that in our own circle, people. And it's a shame, because we're all supposed to be fighting for the same thing. And I wish that every children's hospital, whether it's LA, whether it's Washington, D.C., where they've got an amazing children's hospital, whether it's Milwaukee here, whether they should all have the same specialties treating these cancers, not you've got to travel to get the best treatment.
Right. I 100% agree. That was when we were in D.C., one of the big things was, because, I mean, unfortunately, there can't be, at least as of our current state, there can't be a perfectly proficient, or not proficient is the wrong word, like a specialized doctor. And let's say, and these are some of the stories I heard in DC, was, one parent, they needed their special treatment in Washington, but they lived in, Arizona, and they had to go to Arizona or to Washington, but they wouldn't give it to them because of the bureaucracy or whatever it was. And so one of the big things we were pushing for in DC was like medical care over state borders, like you're protected over state borders, so you don't have to worry about insurance and all that. But even that, I think there's like, to what you were saying, like, having a specialized person in everywhere, like, so that's not a problem, is something that is so ideal, and I hope one day that can happen. But I like, you're in a part of Alabama and you got to get to, I don't know where. It's just, there's so many complications in this disease that come with it that luckily I didn't have to deal with, which, is very, very, like, I'm very thankful for that. But there's so many different aspects to this disease, that I still to this day, like, when you think of it, you forget about this thing, and then when you think of this thing, you forget about this thing. So there's so many things that need to be fixed that I can't fix all of them. I can't even think of all of the things we need to fix. But yeah, it's, when you're talking about traveling over state lines for a specialist, that's in and of itself a feat. That's something that when you do it once, you never want to do it again. And unfortunately, these people have to do it on a weekly, monthly basis or whatever it is. So what the solution is, I don't know. But I know I'm going to be here when it happens, and I'm going to be fighting for it, because it needs to get fixed. I mean, it's absurd to have to drive a kid who's in a dire medical state to, 400, 300, 1,000 miles to where they can get their treatment finally. I went 15 miles down the road and got lucky, because originally when I went into the hospital, it was COVID, and I thought I just had a staph infection in my hip maybe. But my mom was like, okay, we'll go to CHLA just out of an abundance of caution. We don't want to go to a random ER because it's COVID, you know. So we went there, and then that's when I got admitted at 5 p.m. straight away, and I had like 10 IVs in right away. So I got pretty lucky that we went to Children's Hospital, you know, off the jump. But I can only imagine what it'd be like to have to like feel that terrible and go 500 miles to the nearest hospital. Like that's too much.
Yeah, and it's a lot of families are faced with that unfortunate task of having to drive or fly even great distances to receive the treatments that they need. Some, even with the consultations with hospitals, a lot of times treatments can't be performed in certain places because they don't have the training or the staff in order to provide those types of therapies, and so they have to travel. It's not a fun situation, and I will tell you too that insurance does not make things easy. In general, they don't make things easy, but in this situation, they make it very hard because a lot of those decisions are made by quote unquote doctors that are sitting in a room looking at your file but have never seen you face to face, that's a whole ethical situation that could take hours to talk about, but it's really a weird thing. But yeah, I wish there was a way that all these, these treatments and things like that and therapies could be done, where you don't have to go hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles and be able to be comfortable and close to home and things like that. So, but that's an unfortunate side effect of all of this. But one big thing that I will say, and this is just throwing it out there, we have children's hospitals. So in the beginning, before the word hospital, we have the word children's, which is another reason to understand that the treatments that the children receive, whether it's cancer or anything else, are different down the middle. They're not the same. And as adults, you know what? The things that I saw and the things I watched my daughter go through and I watched other families go through, I'd be a big baby. I could watch always with the smiles and with the unbelievable, genuine hearts and things like that with these kids, what they go through. They deserve to be treated better. They deserve to be treated like and respected. And it's unfortunate what they have to go through. But hopefully at some point we'll be able to rectify that situation and give them the respect and recognition that they deserve. And I think that we're on the same page with, trying to end the real epidemic, which is this pediatric cancer, and making a difference for the future of us, really, of our population, of our human race, is these children, giving them the fighting opportunities to grow up and not worry about all this stuff and just be able to be kids and not, be able to name off chemo drugs like they can a Sesame Street book.
Right. And like another thing I'll say about what you were talking about, how the two, like adult cancers and child cancers, are very different, is it's not only because of the medical aspect, it's because think about the bedside manner aspect of it. I mean, when you're dealing with an adult who has cancer, it's going to be very different than when you're dealing with a 4-year-old who has cancer, who has no idea what's going on or why they're there or, what they need to do. They're just freaked out, and that is 100 times different. I'm sure. I mean, I'm not a nurse or a doctor, so I couldn't tell you for sure, but I'm sure that's very different than dealing with the 50-year-old guy who comes in who's like, knows what he needs to do, knows that's an IV, knows what a EKG is, knows what all this is. He's not freaking out about the small things. So just the job of working at a children's hospital, it's got to be harder. I mean, harder is the wrong word. I'll say it's more mentally challenging, because you're not only dealing with all the physical aspects of dealing with a medical patient, you're also dealing with the mental aspects of that patient being a child who's confused and scared and, think about during COVID, only gets to see their mom or their dad, can't see any of their friends. Like, they're ripped from their world and put into a hospital bed and expected to just kind of sit there and let the doctors do whatever they need to do, which is impossible for someone under 10 years old. It's just impossible. Like, if I was under 10 years old and they were doing the stuff that they had to do. I was 17, and even then I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, what, like, let's, like, give me some background. Like, I don't, because I'd never gotten an IV before I went into the ER that day. I'd maybe gotten a blood draw once in my life. And then to go from that to having 10 to 13 IVs in me at once on that night was shocking, to say the least. So I can only imagine what they go through with, like, if I was 10 years younger, if I was 8 years old, 7 years old, going in, and then they started pumping me full of IVs and and platelets and blood products and all this stuff. I can only imagine how much different it would be, and how much scarier it would be. So yeah, I mean, the children's research and treatment development, I think, is its own thing completely. Like, I agree with you totally that they need to increase funding for children's hospital or children's treatment, and only children's treatment for right now. Like, I don't know. I just fully agree with what you're talking about.
Yeah, it is definitely something that needs to happen. And I will say on the fact of children's hospitals, the people, the nurses, out of everybody that we met in the 520 days that our daughter fought, I think we had 2 people that were no longer allowed in her room or to treat her because they had bad attitudes. But generally speaking, the people that we met, the nurses, the doctors, everybody were phenomenal. And it's because they were there dealing with younger children, dealing with patients that are scared out of their minds, that only had one parent at that point that could be there. And they were phenomenal. And I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. If anybody doesn't know what a child life specialist are, they're angels on this earth. And again, people that can go to do this every single day, and I don't think mentally I could. I honestly don't. It's incredible. So what they go through and what they do, it is entirely a different caliber of person that can work in a children's hospital and to be around sick children, even if your ultimate goal is to cure and make them better and make them happy and make their life a little bit easier. To be able to see that every single day, I think mentally, I don't think I could physically do it, and I don't think many could, and it really takes a special group of people. And to all of the doctors and nurses and child life, I truly commend all of you for what you do every single day.
Yeah. And it's to be able to see it and then return the next day with a good attitude. And, like, you know what I mean? That's incredible. I like you said, I couldn't do it. I mean, that's something that is just crazy to me. I mean, these people are angels. They're sent. They're the best of us. So.
Yep. And I just incredible. When you're going through medical school and that's the path you decide to take is to be in the with children, being in the NICU and the PICU, and with these children going through and on the cancer floors and the neuro floors, and to be in that, I think that immersed in that world, it does take a special kind of people. We still stay in touch with our social worker and child life specialist because they're just incredible people, and they've always been there, and they become part of your family, and it's an amazing thing. So, again, hats off to anybody that decides that that's the path you want to take. And for any of you that have made a child smile today, thank you. And that, to me, that means that you've accomplished everything you set out to do for the day. And those children and those parents, believe me, respect and have an unbelievable amount of gratitude. Even if they don't show it, they're feeling it. I promise you, we feel it. Because it takes a load and a pressure off that I don't think we can ever explain how it makes us feel. So thank you to all of you.
Yeah, just to add on to that, like, if I don't, if anybody is watching that is a, cancer nurse or doctor or whatever it is, you are actually an incredible person. Like, I don't know how else to say it. You do a job that not many can do. You do it well. You do it for them. You don't do it because, oh, you know what, I feel like doing this today. You do it because you want to help people. And like what I was saying at the beginning, like, meeting people who actually want to help and actually want to better themselves and better other people is such a pleasure and an honor for someone who doesn't get to see that every day. you're around these people, your colleagues and your patients. Uh, it it's hard to explain, like what Curtis was saying. It's hard to explain how much just you being there and being positive means to the families and to the patients. Like I remember I was in the hospital and I had one nurse. It was late at night. I was having a really bad night. I couldn't sleep, whatever it was. And me and my dad were up just doing nothing. And I was talking to my nurse. I was like, "Hey, do you have any show recommendations or anything like that?" And it was just like having a normal conversation. And I don't think he realized at the moment, but that normal conversation with someone who is not my dad or my mom, um, where he's just giving me shows to watch or do whatever, did so much for me in that moment that I could never explain it or explain my gratitude to him just for that little conversation. So anytime you have an interaction with a patient as a nurse or a doctor, it can help them so much without even you doing anything. Um, and it's hard for you guys to realize that because this is your job. So essentially, all I want to say is just thank you from all the patients and families who don't get to say it, for little things like that, like little anecdotal conversations you have with your patients or whatever it is. Any little time you feel like you help someone, I'm just here to say thank you for that, because they don't always get to say thank you. And I remember I don't get to see a lot of my nurses or doctors anymore, but if I did, all I would do is kiss their feet. I mean, they're the best. So yeah, just thank you for all you do.
Absolutely. I second and third that all day long. It is definitely not an easy road. It's definitely not an easy path. It's not a place that anybody wants to be as a patient or a family going through this. But when you have people that are truly there for the right reasons, and they don't treat it as a job, they treat it as, giving back in a way that can only mean the world to people without ever actually believing that it does. You are truly incredible people. So yeah, absolutely. Keep doing what you're doing and understand that there is a world of people out here that truly believe you are the angels around here, and you are sent here to. That's your calling, and you answered it. And we appreciate you being there in times when we didn't think that we could stand up straight, or we just couldn't make it. You were there for us.
Yeah.
So I want to be honest with you, I think what I would like to do is just really kind of ask if you have any advice that you would love to give people your age that, maybe are, they're in college, they're getting out of college, looking for what they're going to do in life. Any advice to them, and as well as any advice to these younger kids that are going through this right now, and anything you could say to them.
Yeah, I mean, for the younger kids or anybody who's going through cancer right now, like I said earlier, it can have such a big effect. Like your attitude can have such a big effect. And I know it's so easy to say, "Oh, just have a good attitude. Like, don't worry about it." You know what I mean? Which is not what I'm trying to say by any means. I'm trying to say, do your best to see any positives in any situation. Whether you're in the hospital room stuck there with just your family, there's always going to be some tiny little flicker of positivity, and finding that and holding on to that is going to be so key and vital to being able to get through such a dark time. Because if you're just going through, your cancer treatment and you have this attitude of like, I'm not going to get better. There's so much I have to do. I don't know what, I feel like crap. I don't, which is very easy to do. And I did that too. It's perfectly normal. But the ability to just grab a little speck of light, like, oh, I had a nice conversation with my dad today. I'll think about that, or, oh, the nurse said something funny earlier, or, whatever it is, any little speck of light that you see in any day, just hold on to it a little longer than you normally would. And then after doing that, and after, once you get through your treatment, you'll see what happened to me was I was able to become such a optimist. Like before, I was a very pessimistic person. Before I had cancer, I was very pessimistic. I sat on my phone by myself a lot. and I was very kind of closed off. That's not to say I wasn't social and didn't like people, but I was very closed off. And then after doing that method of hanging on to a little bit of light in such a bad time, just hanging on to that little bit, once I came out the other side, I noticed I was a lot more open and excited and willing to try new things. And even if I couldn't because my legs were limited or whatever, I'd still say, hey, I'll give that a try. Let's see what we can do. So basically, my real advice for anybody going through cancer right now is just hold on to that little speck of light in any day, whatever it is, or find a song that you love. For me, it was Kokomo by the Beach Boys. I kept listening to that over and over and over again. So anything that makes you feel a little bit better, hold on to it. Anything that makes you not feel great, just leave it in the past. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it now. Just leave it in the past. And then for anybody my age, if you've not been affected by cancer or have a family member who has been affected by cancer, all you can do is just keep plugging away with whatever you're doing. The only way that you can repay is the wrong word. I don't know, but the only way that you can make up for your time that your family had to deal with cancer or you had to deal with cancer is to keep living, is to not dwell on how rough the past was, but to keep living your life and having a good time and doing what you can, doing what you want to do as a career, doing your hobby, finding a new passion, whatever it is. Just enjoy life, because that's something that I took for granted before and I almost lost it, and now I will never take that for granted again. And anybody you talk to who has survived cancer is going to say, yeah, I'm living my life. I'm trying to have a good day every day, because every day could, be your last day to just have a normal day, or, it could be my last day to go in the pool with my mom, or whatever it is. Just treat every day as if it's going to be the best day ever. That's the advice my dad gave me. That's the advice I give now.
That's phenomenal. I think that's perfect. Obviously having a great attitude, and just treat every day like it's going to be amazing, and don't in the 90s it was the big thing to say don't sweat the small things. And at that point I think I blew it off like it was no big deal, but now it makes a lot of sense. A lot of things that we let get in the way of our lives and we let pressure us and we let dictate how our days are going to go are insignificant. And that's not, we're all still going to get angry and we're still going to get road rage and we're still going to have problems, and it is what it is. But try to just blow that stuff off and just enjoy your day. Enjoy the time around the people that you love and what you love to do. And if you love doing what you're doing, it will never be a job. It will never be a career. It will be just your day-to-day life that you're living. So that's my advice. And in closing, I like to just say thank you once again for taking the time to come on and share your story and speak about some hard stuff, some good stuff, but at the same time, I think getting more messages and more stories out there is the best way to go. So thank you again for doing that today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I mean, like I said, I love doing these things. I love speaking to new people and hearing their stories and, doing whatever I can to help out. So, yeah, I thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's my absolute pleasure and honor. And I look forward to seeing more of what you can do, and good luck in your next couple of years of college and getting to your dreams. And if I'm looking for a private pilot, I'll look out to you, and
I got my number.
All right. I got places to be, and these big jets take up a lot of time, so.
Oh yeah. You got my number.
Absolutely. That's perfect. So you can, if you go to stbaldricks.org, you can read more about Sam's story. You can also read more about how you can donate. You can also just kind of get the facts if you want facts. Those are there as well. Events that they're doing, you can host your own events. Great organization, lots of information you can find there. So check them out. And again, we will keep putting these episodes out and getting more stories out there, more real life stories, more in-depth opportunities on how you can get involved in the pediatric cancer world, continue to advocate and be ambassadors. So once again, Sam, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will see everybody else next week.